Hello everyone, my name is Ron Watts. I'm the chair of the Camping and Retreat Ministries Board. And today we had a meeting here in Columbia, our board, with the bishop and with a room full of people who are committed to Camping and Retreat Ministries. And what we did was we talked about the processes that have gone on the past 2 years as our committee has met since the new quadrennium started, in coming up with a vision and direction for ministries with next generations of people. And after we had the meeting and we felt that it went really well and there was a positive conversation and results, that this is something that more people in the conference needed to have access to. And so we're staying later in the day, and some of the committee members had to leave. But we're here to have that conversation all over again. So I wanted to allow the committee members who remained for this to give a little introduction of themselves, and then we'll jump into it.
I'm Bart Hildreth, and I'm a district superintendent for the Ozarks district, and am serving as a member of the cabinet serving on the Camping and Retreat Board Ministries.
I'm John Spalding. I'm pastor at Kingsway United Methodist Church in Springfield.
I'm Garrett Drake. I'm the catalyst for Next Generation Ministries.
I'm Sherry Hobbin. I'm the Director of Connectional Ministries and Communications for the conference.
I'm Betsy Vicente. I'm a lay member. I attend Missouri United Methodist Church.
I'm Robert Schnese, Bishop of the Missouri Conference, and I'm not a member of the camping board, but sat in today to hear kind of some of the background and direction of camping ministries. So I look forward to the conversation that we're about to repeat, I guess I should say, and a review of the one that we had earlier today.
2 years ago, Bishop, we had our first meeting of the new quadrennium of this Camping and Retreat Ministries Board, and we invited you to come. And as you do with other boards, sometimes meet and talk about the future, and we wanted to hear from you. And you asked us some good questions. And we took those questions seriously. Some of the questions you asked us that day: how does camping relate to the mission statement of the annual conference? How does camping partner with local churches? Since disciples are made at the local level, how does that happen? Who are we serving in our camping program? That's one of the questions. Is it the people in our church? Is it the people who are not yet in our church? The unchurched? Also, you asked us, how is culture changing? And how does this change our perception of camping? We know that there are differing expectations out there now about what people are looking for in a camping experience, or even if they want to go to a particular camp. And so, how is all of that changing? And so, we went to work immediately on this process. One of the questions you asked was, is camping and youth ministries under the same umbrella, or two different umbrellas? And in our conference, we have had these parallel structures for some time now that really are dealing with the same age group. We have Camping and Retreat Ministries and CCYM, and they're really dealing with the same people, but they're parallel. They had two different conference staff members leading them, and two different structures, and they hardly related. In our research into this, we discovered that this is how it is in some conferences, and other conferences they're merged. And as it became clear that there was going to be two retirements of those very areas roughly about the same time, this was one of the first things we addressed. And it became clear to us that it would make more sense for the conference to have one entity dealing with this age group instead of two parallel structures. And so it was then, 2 years ago, that we recommended that these be merged into one, and it was not long after that a task force was formed to envision how this might go forward in terms of conference staffing. I was able to be one of the members. I served on that task force as a representative of camping, And it was there that we said we need to we affirmed that direction, that it really needed to be under one umbrella because we're dealing with the same age groups, and that we needed to hire one staff person who would oversee both of these areas. And so that task force did its work, kind of thought about how would this function, what would it look like, and then we advertised the position, interviewed people, and that's when we hired Garrett Drake, and he started in January of this year. So that was one of the issues that we began to address as a result of this 2 years ago. And then as we began to meet, and the committee's been tremendous, by the way. I mentioned this earlier today that we've only had, in all the meetings in these 2 years, only 2 people have missed once. We've had just perfect attendance down through the couple years, and just a real commitment on the part of this camping board, and I've really been pleased with that. And one of the first things when we got together, we said, okay, as we're trying to envision what's the future for camping and retreat ministries, but more importantly, what are we really about? What is our mission in the conference? And we kind of imagine, let's just say that there's no structure, there's no committee, there's no conference staff, and there's no properties. What would we be? What would we do? And it's hard for a while to do that because you're so accustomed to doing things the way they've been done. But we said it was really essential to do that. What would we contribute? What unique contribution do we make to the conference mission, which is leading congregations to lead people to actively follow Christ? And a couple, after we had several excellent meetings with rich discussion, theological conversation about, first of all, what is our mission? And then secondly, who is it we work with, or who is it we work with and what is our mission? And we determined after a couple meetings that our responsibility is with what we term next generations of people. We had conversations because camping and retreats deal not only with children and teenagers, but also with adults. And while the facilities certainly are used by adults, and there's been our target we're really aiming at children and teenagers, students, and so we said that would be the target group. And then what is our mission? And as we were trying to envision that, we said, well, what aspect of the 5 fruitful practices, 5 practices of fruitful congregations, what is that? I just mispronounced that in here. You're the author of the
No,
book.
that's fine. I can't remember the order.
So anyway, which practice do we have ownership of? And after this we had some great conversation. We looked, there's certainly radical hospitality that takes place at our camps. And I've directed a camp, a middle school camp I did for 21 years, did another high school camp. I did that 1 year, decided that I was not called high school, and then did 21 years of middle school camp. And, if you don't exercise radical hospitality in that first day, you're going to have homesick children, you're going to have, problems with the rest of the week. And so obviously that's present. And but what we decided that really what we're about is intentional faith development. That we're really there to help children and young people grow in their faith and commitment to Jesus Christ. And so we said, okay, so that's our practice. That's the one that we own. We're not the only ones to do that, but that's our mission as a conference, is to help congregations do this better. And so we worked through that for a while, and then we began noticing that there were some opportunities out there and some different ways of doing this. Again, saying, what if we had nothing? Again, going back to the drawing board, it was just a blank slate. How would we begin to go about that task? Well, first we said we had to really settle on our mission. What is that mission? So we developed a mission statement. And it reads very simply like this: leading local churches of the Missouri Conference in intentional faith development that shapes next generations into mature disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Now, we know that's too long for a mission statement. It doesn't fit on the back of a T-shirt. So, you know,
Why don't you read it through again just a
Yeah.
little more slowly?
So it's a little long, but let me read this. Here it is. Leading local churches of the Missouri Conference in intentional faith development that shapes next generations into mature disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And we said this is really what we're about. And if we're not helping congregations do a good job of developing, then we're not doing our job. And one of the things that we noted, but we're not the first to note it, and it's painfully obvious, is that we, and really the American church in general, is not doing a very good job of intentional faith development with next generations. The research is out there, the anecdotal evidence is out there. We know that if the barometer for success is how many of our people are staying involved, connected to Christ and the church as college students and young adults, we're not doing very well. And so as we began to look at it that way, we said, wow, there is a huge opportunity. There are many, many opportunities out there as a conference to come alongside congregations and equip them to reach next generations. That many of our churches, I believe, are crying out for help. They don't know how to disciple these young people. They don't know what to do, and they want help. And so it just seemed that the opportunities are absolutely endless for coming alongside congregations and helping them do intentional faith development, so that when they get to college, they're still involved in the local church. When they're young adults and they're starting families, that they're already connected. And so it's a very, very important work, and we all realize that, but it just dawned on us, wow, what an amazing opportunity. The sky's the limit. And so if we just start with a blank slate, where do we go from here? And we began to envision all kinds of opportunities of things that could happen. And along with that, the mission statement, we said, well, if that's our mission, what does a win look like? That's always an important question I ask in my congregation and of our staff, and that is, how do we know if we're winning? And if you don't know what the target is, how can you begin to aim at it? In soccer, what's it look like to, soccer, the objective is to put the ball in the net. Well, what's putting the ball in the net for us? And on one of our retreats, we developed these wins. So one of them is more persons in more churches maturing through participating in next generation ministries. Now, in our research, what we discovered is that only about 20% of our churches are currently are participating in the camping ministries throughout the summer. And only about 13% of our churches are involved in retreats in between Labor Day and Memorial Day. So, in other words, we have a very small percentage of our churches involved currently. And there's some reasons, and honestly, part of that is because I don't know. We haven't determined this, but there's a significant portion of our churches that don't have any children or youth. So they don't have any children or youth to send to camps. But then there are also a significant number of our churches in the conference who simply don't use our camps or for retreats or for summer camping experiences. So we said more persons involved, more churches connecting would be a win. We want to see that number go way up from 20%. Because we believe that, again, going back to the mission of the conference, the churches don't exist to serve the conference. The conference exists to serve the local church. And if 80% of our churches are not involved, then apparently we're not scratching where they're itching. We're not meeting a need. And so, being aware of where churches need help and assistance here is what we should be about. Now, we had 3 subpoints under that win, and those are multiplication of disciples, disciples making disciples, that's what it would look like. It's not just making disciples, but making disciples who make disciples. That more of our churches would have young people actively involved in hands-on mission and justice ministries. Now, one of the things that we've seen is exponential growth in our mission trips. The mission trips have had a profound impact upon students' lives. We want to see more of that. And then a sub-win of this is that more of our young people are actively involved in their local churches, that they're not dropping out in the numbers that they're dropping out right now, that they're staying involved through high school, through college, through the early adult years, because we've led congregations to effectively make disciples of this age group. So that was the first category. The next was win. The other win was the calling and equipping of leaders. Now we know there are many, and we've heard many stories of our pastors who received their call to ministry at camp. At a campfire one night, they sensed God's call, and they surrendered to that call, and those are beautiful stories, and we want to see more of that, not less. And so one of the wins would be if we're doing our work effectively, more congregations are seeing more next generations of people stepping into leadership, both clergy and lay leadership in our local churches. Thirdly, that a win would be that congregations own the process, that they don't look to the annual conference to do it for them, but that they own the process of intentional faith development, and that they know how to do that. And that involves some consultation, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, a consultation process and owning the process and the outcomes. And then a fourth win that we identified was to be a tool for equipping a local church's disciple-making process, to have tools available, whether those are properties, programs, staff, resources, that we would be a resource center, if you will, for local churches as they lead people to actively follow Christ. And so as we were going on, we're trying to envision what would this look like, and we wanted models. What are some innovative things? What are some effective ministries that are happening around the country that we could try here in Missouri? And one of the things we discovered was this a thing called mobile camps. Sometimes, some places it's called day camps. And the first example of the mobile camp idea we got wind of was from the North Georgia Conference. And John went to a conference of camping people across our connection and learned about that. So John, why don't you share what you learned from North Georgia and what they were doing there and why they did it and the results?
Right. In the North Georgia Conference, they had a camp, particularly a larger camp called Camp Gleason, and they noticed that all of their campers that were attending that camp kind of came from a region around that property, and that there was a portion of their conference that they were not attracting any campers from, that those churches were staying out of the camping ministry, and so they had this notion, at first anyway, that they would try to find a way to take camp to those churches. And that in taking camp to those churches, the hope was that they would connect them with a regional camp, but more importantly, they thought they could build up support to build a camp in that area so that they'd have a second campground in that area. And so they developed this notion of mobile camps. They called them day camps, but they developed this notion that they would take the camp to the congregation, allow the youth and children there to experience a camp kind of environment, then with the hopes of tying them back to a residential camp, building up the camp base, and then launching a new drive for camp property. They also tied with that, though, a really neat concept called Camp Eli, which was designed and aimed at high school students to involve them in a 2-week immersion leadership kind of experience. And the youth would pay to come to this 2 weeks of experience, and then in exchange, they would go back and give service and serve as some of the support staff for those mobile camps.
And how long would they commit to serving?
They would commit for 2 weeks of service.
So really a 3-week commitment.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And now what they discovered is that the demand for those mobile camps went up. The first year they had 4 weeks. They had one camp and it went to 4 different locations. The next year they had the one camp, but it went out all summer. And when I was speaking with them, they had 32 weeks with multiple units that they were sending out, so that they covered the whole summer in 32 different locations. What they also discovered in all of that was that those persons weren't interested in going to residential camp. They were interested in that kind of experience that put it in their context, met their children and youth needs, and they're just continuing in that model.
You know, I visited one kind of example of this here in Missouri that was from a visiting team from outside of our conference. It was leading kind of a vacation Bible school in one of our small rural churches. But I still don't have a clear idea of what that looks like. And we talked about it a little bit this afternoon. But so a mobile camp means a group of people who've been prepared or trained. I mean, is that volunteers? Is that pastors, lay people who are camp leaders or whatever? And then this group of maybe some high school students have been trained through the Camp Eli. They come into a community, and then what do they do? What do they do beforehand? What do they do during the week? What do they do afterward? What does that look like?
Yeah, I'll speak to the beginning of that, then I'm going to pass the ball to Garrett because he has some other ideas of visiting other sites as well. But for the North Georgia Conference, what that looked like was there was a core conference staff person and then some other core leadership that went out, and then these high school students were volunteers that supplemented that. And then in the North Georgia Conference, that was very contextual to whatever that particular church wanted that week to look like. They had a basic curriculum, but it could be modified and shifted. And Garrett, that's probably where my expertise starts to run out, and you visited more with them, I know, later on.
Yeah, we're going to come back to that in a moment, or continue to talk
Yeah,
about North
that's
Georgia?
fine.
You
We'll
wanna-
come back to it.
Because I think a couple interesting points about
Okay.
North Georgia is that the exponential growth of these
Oh, yeah.
camps, and they had intended to do this as really a precursor to building another camp and getting interest, and they actually have set aside the notion of building the other camp.
Right.
The permanent camp. The day camps have become so popular that that they've gone with that instead.
Right. No, that's entirely how that works, and you know, some folks ask about what the cost of that looks like as well, and they have different models for that in a North Georgia Conference. There are some of those sites that charge so much per camper that comes, and there are others who the church has said, nope, we're underwriting this, and we're going to do that. And then there are some where the conference has said, nope, this is a missional thing. We're gonna find out how we can fund that, and we're just gonna do it for that particular community because that's what we're in the business of doing. And all of that's still a little bit unclear to us as exactly how we'll fund that or
But
encourage it.
folks, I mean, it's a congregation that signs up for this rather
Yes.
than individuals. And then once
Right.
that congregation does, those children or young people register through the conference or through the local church or...
Again, that can be either way, and in North Georgia, they do both. Some of them are registered through the annual conference site, and some of them are managed just by the local church piece. One of the reasons why we're kind of moving away from naming it as a day camp is we would see the option of it being even an overnight piece. And so we like mobile camp better. So that local church says, you know, hey, we're going to put them up overnight, then great. It could also be on a weekend. It doesn't just have to be during the day. It could be a weekend experience. So it could be in one community Monday through Thursday and can be in somewhere else Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. A great flexibility with that concept.
Two things that energized us about what John shared with us about the North Georgia experience. Number one, it's missional. It takes the church to the need, into the community, instead of asking the community to come to us.
Yeah.
We love the missional aspect of it. And secondly, the leadership development piece, which we've already identified as one of our wins. Camp Eli is a fabulous idea. They don't spend that week just training them how to run the mobile camp. They spend that week developing these young people as leaders. So they do teaching on different aspects of leadership in the church and in the community. And so after a week, these students come out, of course, prepared to lead the mobile camps, but they also come out prepared to go back into their churches as better leaders. And that's pretty exciting stuff there. So this was all before, we had settled on hiring Garrett, and then later actually this year, not too long ago, a few months ago, after Garrett was on board, we said, we want to know more about these mobile camps.
So you were discussing mobile camps before you interviewed Garrett?
Yeah, it
Okay.
was John coming back from that. What event was
It
that?
was a national camping conference, and I'd gone there from the board with our camp directors. And so we'd gone down there and spent the week. It was held in Florida, and
Yeah, we sent him with a mission, be scouting out great ideas. And that was the idea.
That was one of them.
He came back with that. And so, yeah, that was already something that we had our antenna up about that. So when we hire Garrett and we go further into our plan, and as we're thinking, what does this look like? How can we best lead congregations to lead next generations of people in intentional faith development? This seemed like a natural path to follow. But we wanted to find out more. We only had one example. So fast forward quite a few months, actually up until this summer, really, it was, we asked Garrett, we asked him to go on a fact-finding trip across the country to see what was being done with mobile camps, day camps. And he did, took the month of July to do some traveling. Garrett, why don't you share what you found out?
Yeah. So we did begin in North Georgia and looked at their setup and how that was all been done, and how the equipping piece of that was done specifically with the Eli camp. And the setup of it, the logistics of it, and from there flew out to San Francisco, which is not a church-based organization, but it was a city. And the city has a great commitment to we are better together. Whether we have differing beliefs about God or our faith or however our positions are, we are better together to be in relationship with one another. So they provided opportunities for nonprofits and churches alike to engage in their community in what would normally be day camp activities. And so as they hit roadblock after roadblock of churches not wanting to engage their community, they said, quote, we're going to do something the church should have done. We're going to engage the community ourselves. And so they have a unique thing from their landscape. They can go canoeing and some other things. And they engage the community right in their urban of massive amount of concrete and other logistics of being involved in the community. From there, I flew to Seattle, went over to Yakima, Washington, and the Iowa conference was there doing a day camp there at a local church. And from that place, I went to Colorado Springs, Navigator, a parachurch organization that really has a premier facility of residential camp. But they too even recognize the shift that happened in our culture, the decline in residential camping, and the continued need that the church has had to help reach out and disciple the next generation. And so one of the mobile camps in which we went to was a church plant. And they were using that mobile camp to reach out into the community, and they help both rural and inner city and urban churches alike, both small and large, with that process.
So I imagine there's some significant differences between the way Navigators does
Right.
a mobile camp or day camp versus the city of San Francisco.
Right.
And that was a non-church model, I take it.
Right.
And that'd be different from North Georgia. Kind of what What did you learn from these different models, or what stood out or was distinctive about each one?
Yeah, the parachurch organization navigators, they do a fantastic job, but they set some minimums. You know, we need this many students, and they have more of a program outlined. One of the things in which I noticed from the annual conferences that we're doing it, specifically like the North Georgia, is we're going to set out a template about how this is done, and then we're going to work with the needs of the church, the outcomes that the church has, and everything from marketing to how we assimilate and how we disciple. We're going to contextualize that, not just for the church, but also for the target audience and the demographics in that community. And so one model was a little bit more specific in how it was done. Another model was very contextualized, which is appealing, I think, to the camping board, because all of our communities are very different. We have communities in rural and in city, and the demographics of those look dramatically different. So does the needs.
So a church doesn't just sign up for this for a week in the summer,
Right.
and then outsiders come lead their children's program,
Right.
like almost a vacation Bible school type thing for 5 days or something. There's actually a preparation, or there's some kind of lead up, or I mean,
Yeah.
what would you envision the engagement of the conference before a church mobile camp began or launched?
And that's one thing that we're looking at as a board is what is that exactly, how is that defined? One possibility we have is the next generation renewal process. I think many of us have experienced a VBS setting where we have a great amount of kids that come, and then also at the same time a great amount of kids that leave. And so what does it look like to work with the church before and helping the church to prepare, and then using the mobile camps as a way to outreach and assimilate children or youth, and then work with the church on an ongoing basis to help with that discipleship process.
So it's kind of engagement before the day camp or mobile camp
Right.
begins, and cooperation. I guess it uses local church leadership
That's
too
right.
to help staff it, and then follow through as far as how you follow through with families and follow up with
Right.
families and
Right.
that kind of thing.
Well, it was really, it was great to learn more about the possibilities that exist with mobile camps. And really, it's something that's gaining momentum across the country. The Navigators, in fact, say they're going to expand to Kansas City.
Right.
They're planning to do more and more of this. And so we see just, again, a lot of great missional opportunities, leadership development, helping churches reach their communities. So there's some excitement about that as well. Well, as a board, one of the things I shared with the group earlier today is that since we began in this new quadrennium and our board met, we've dealt with the camping properties as we need to, and we've done the particulars of our job that we're supposed to do, but really we've been a visioning team. And so we spent the first year and a half dreaming, visioning, how could we help the conference fulfill its mission? And then as that became more clear, Garrett was hired, the conference structure is getting brought together in terms of how we work with next generations in our conference, bringing CCYM and camping all kind of under the same umbrella. We then said, okay, we really need to get a better handle on our camps, our campsites, our properties, and see what's being done there. And so we traveled to each of the sites. We had a full day meeting there. The site directors hosted us, and they were all gracious hosts. And they spoke to us, shared what they were experiencing there, their dreams, their plans, and so forth. And we got a tour of the facilities. And so we went to each of these sites over a period of about 6 or 8 weeks. We wanted to have those experiences all relatively close together, and we did. We made notes along the way. We came back and we assessed what is it that we're experiencing at our camps. And we learned a lot of things, and one of the things we discovered is that a lot of our focus, especially camping and retreat ministries, has been around the properties, the programming that takes place there. So after we visited the camps, Dan Steska, who was hired by our board, he works with the Office of Creative Ministries, hired by our board to give immediate supervision to our site directors, has developed a relationship with them. He went to the site directors and asked, what are the immediate things that need to get fixed? What things would you like to see get fixed? And then kind of this visioning, what could you, in the next 3 to 5 years, what would be your dreams? And John, Dan's not able to be here with us, but would you give us a little synopsis of what he found from what the site director said?
Right, and so what the site directors gave him were just kind of some bare minimal things of just things that needed to get fixed right now, and that number was fairly small. And then there were pieces that life would be better. We'd have a better camping program if we added these things. And then there were those things that would, again, just reiterating what you said, would make us more competitive with camps that are like us. Not camps that are different than us, but camps that are kind of like us. Mm-hmm. And the figure that the camp directors kind of gave back when you added all three of those up was that figure that was about $3 million. Not quite $3 million. By the time you included what we are kind of going in the deficit spending right now. Now, what they gave us were not necessarily the same things that we saw whenever we visited. So there were other issues that weren't on that list of things that we would say were not dreams, but essentials to being there. And at the same time, or shortly thereafter, our insurance is coming up for renewal. And so the insurance company came and looked at all of our sites and gave us kind of a risk assessment. And basically kind of walked us through, we will insure you, but this is going to be your premium. And we will continue to insure you, but your premium's going to continue to go up a little bit because there are some things that you still need to be addressing. And we think in order for you to manage your risk well, you're going to need to invest about $75,000 a year into the properties over and above what are on these lists that the site directors have already given you. And some of those things we had noted, but some of the things we hadn't even noted yet. And so these all of a sudden became the essentials in order to operate the camp that were not included in the figures that the camp directors gave us.
Yeah. And another thing that we learned on the financial piece is we were trying to understand ourselves and put all the numbers together, and Dan Steska was a tremendous help in pulling all these numbers together, was that we've been running a deficit spending in terms of the support the annual conference gives our camping program through apportionments and what the actual costs were. And that deficit is right at just real close, just under $50,000. We have about $430,000 a year that comes in through apportionments. And so when we looked at those numbers, we realized we have $430,000 in apportionments, about a $50,000 deficit, and then the insurance company on top of that is saying you need to spend $75,000 a year and add 3% of that a year in order to keep your premiums from skyrocketing. And so if you add those two figures together, our apportionments would really need to go to about $550,000 or so, $560,000, in order just to do what we're doing now. That's not counting any major upgrades or new buildings or expansion or large-scale improvements. That's just doing what we do. And one of the things I emphasized in our meeting today and with our guests is that that's not the main issue. And we know there's been a lot of discussion. It's not about the deficit or the things that have to be done. It's about fulfilling the conference mission. And what is the best? We are putting a lot of our dollars into maintaining properties. And one of the things that I think we just have to be honest about is that we don't have a very good track record when it comes to maintaining our buildings. I was a event director at Epworth Among the Hills, a camp that's very dear to my heart. My children and my wife, we were there every fourth week of July for 13 straight years. My kids were raised there, kind of. But that camp was literally falling down around us. Through years of deferred maintenance, we just let that camp deteriorate to be in pitiful condition. And that's happening to one degree or another at other campsites as well. What we budget and we want these properties, but what we budget for them is really not adequate to cover the maintenance and the needs that are there. And so we just, unfortunately, we have a track record of not being really good at property maintenance. What I believe that we can do and what we're good at is the programming and discipleship. I liken this, use this analogy today, and we've used it on our camp board. Dan Seska, who's a former school superintendent, shared how some of the history of schools that one time many of our schools, and some do still, have their own bus lines. They own their own buses. They had their own cafeteria workers and their own food programs. And what some school systems have realized is, you know, their core mission is education. They're good at education, but they're not really necessarily good at running bus lines. And they're not especially good at running food management operations in the schools, and so they've outsourced that. And that's where we started to go down the path. Well, what if we didn't have all of this money tied up in capital and properties, and could release that more towards programming, play to our strengths, in other words. And so that seed was planted, and as we tried to get a good handle on what the current needs of our facilities really are. Well, that right after annual conference, we had a retreat. We've had several retreats where we spent an extended amount of time together, dreaming, envisioning, and it was there that we came up with this draft proposal. And I know, Bishop, you've heard the bullet points of this before, and we shared it again today. But everything we've talked about before is kind of background to this draft proposal that we came up with shortly after annual conference. And I think I'll just go through those bullet points and talk about those things. First, and this is really important, is that we will continue camping, but not at our current sites. And I think that's one of the things that's been most misunderstood as the word has spread around the conference about the changes that we're proposing in camping and retreat ministries. We believe that camping needs to continue. And we're going to continue it. And we just want to be freed from the restraints and the constraints of being property managers, which we've shown over the years we're not really good at anyway. And so camping will continue to happen, but at alternative locations.
Let me ask about that. You described the day camp or the mobile camp notion, which goes actually to churches and works within that location. What are the other non-property based options that you have here? And because one of those I know has to do with Central Methodist University, and it might be helpful to just hear what that looks like. And also there was some conversation this afternoon about those camping programs such as backpacking or canoe trips or things that take place on national parks, state parks, and other settings like that. I'm not sure who wants to.
Well, absolutely. I think the Central Methodist piece is very intriguing to us. Now, again, I think the notion is that that's the only, and as you've already pointed out, there are many other options available to us, but we have a wonderful university right here at the heart of our state. And we asked Garrett to look into this, and so he began having conversations with the president there, and they share the same last name, but they're not related. So Garrett, why don't you talk about the conversations you've had with President Drake?
Yeah, so when we begin looking at what does it look like if we don't have camping at our current properties, we went to, or I did, to Central Methodist University, had a conversation with Lucas and Roger, and said this is kind of what we're looking at, the next generation umbrella of 0 to 25, what makes the most sense? And so had a conversation about what ways could Central Methodist University partner with our discipleship process. Certainly there's activities that's happening during the summer, but even in Roger's own words, he says pretty much the campus is dead. And so there's a great opportunity here for the camping and retreat ministry to use facilities that aren't normally being used. And so at that time, we toured the facilities. We looked at a lot of indoor facilities that were available, and maintained much better than what we could ever do at our current sites. There's also property set aside for rugged experiences as well. But even outside of that, we recognize that not every camp is going to be facilitated there. And so we began looking at Boy Scouts and other facilities and state parks and national parks and retreat centers all throughout the state, about how they could help facilitate these local camps and making the camps more accessible as they become more closer to churches and not just in 4 central locations or just at Central Methodist University.
And so some exciting possibilities there with Central Methodist because as I believe research shows that students who go to United Methodist institutions for college tend to stay connected to the church, which is, again, one of our stated wins, right? And they own it. And talk a little bit about the cost. Is it going to cost more or less for a camp to be held there?
Right. Well, one thing is the facilities are going to be ran no matter if someone's in the facilities or they're not. And as we begin looking at this and moving in a different direction, it does make a lot of sense. As we can go there to our own facilities, our own Methodist University, and use their facilities at a lower cost, at a minimal cost. And so what that does is that lowers the camping experience price for children and youth throughout our conference and makes it more accessible to more people.
And then there, again, we're going to meet with our event directors, and
The event directors are the volunteer, the pastors who volunteered, and the lay people who volunteered who lead 1-week camps each year.
Yeah, we call them directors, but there's so many directors here and there.
Yeah, I don't
So
wanna
site directors,
confuse it
there's
with,
conference directors, and so the event directors run the camps. Yes, they recruit the counselors, they lead the children and the youth during their weeks of camp, and some of them have had successful camps for many, many years. And we're going to meet with them and say, how can we facilitate your camp happening in an alternative location? Already, we have done Extreme Camp at Blue Mountain through LaCroix. I directed it 21 years, and I handed off. I retired after my youngest son graduated from that. I said I'd do it through his time when he finished 8th grade. And so for the past 5 years, my staff has led that camp. And while it's primarily a LaCroix camp now, it is still a conference event. My staff, they've already gone out and looked at alternative locations. We're going to find something. Now, we're a large church. It's easier for us. I understand. It's easier for us to do that. So that's why we want to meet with the event directors, talk about the options, help facilitate options, find locations. Now, there was a time in some of our folks in conference, remember, when we had a lot of off-site events. Mm-hmm. And the backpacking trips and canoe trips and horseback camps that were never held at our properties because we didn't have the facilities for that. So again, I think that expands opportunities for camping. We're all about camping. That's going to happen still. It's again, we're not very good at the whole property ownership and management and maintenance side of things, and move towards our strengths, play to our strengths. And so we're going to continue camping. That's really the first element, but not at our current sites. And then this is the element, this part of our plan is, of course, has been the most controversial to people, and that is that we would dismiss the current site directors and hire caretakers for each of the sites. That, we did not come to that decision lightly. These people have committed years and years of their lives to Christ and His church and making disciples through camping ministry. That was a painful decision to make, but at the same time, we feel we have a exciting new direction, and it just will not include, if the annual conference agrees with this direction, it will not include the properties, and so we felt that we needed to dismiss the site directors and also do so in such a time that they could find other jobs doing this, that this is the prime time of the year, of the season, to find a job directing a camp somewhere else. And so then the other thing was that we would continue next generation renewal consultation processes. Garrett is already beginning to consult with churches. Many of our churches are familiar with HCI, Healthy Church Initiative, and many churches now at a conference have gone through HCI. I liken it to that, although it's not exactly the HCI process. It is a consultation process where Garrett, and eventually I assume a team, will be going into churches to say, okay, our youth ministry is struggling, our children's ministry is struggling. How can we get better at this? And we, again, that's something, as we look at our mission as a conference, leading congregations to make disciples, we feel this is something we can do. We can come in and offer a consultation, give them an honest assessment of the ministries as they exist, and suggestions for improvements, and some goals and metrics to aim for. And then one of the other bullet points under our draft proposal is to proceed with the purchase and staffing of mobile camps, and that's already beginning to happen. Garrett has some exciting materials and things that go inside the trailer, the trailers themselves that'll be pulled onto these sites and done for the mobile camps, and we're going to proceed with that. We've had conversation on the board. How many of those? Definitely one, maybe two, and John is definitely promoting for two camps and have them up and running for next summer. We have already had pastors pull us aside and say, we want to do one of those mobile camps. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in that. And then, as I already mentioned, but bullet point is pursue alternative locations for programming for next summer. That we're not going to skip a beat. That the event directors who want to continue will continue, and that will intentional faith development will continue to happen through camping. Just in different places. And then it's our intent to first to go to the Mission Council and to seek their blessing, because we know this is a major decision. It is our intent then to go to the Missouri Annual Conference and propose that the properties be put up for sale. And obviously that's a big piece. And we don't come to that lightly either. We know that significant life-changing events have occurred at Jolda, Wilderness, Blue Mountain, and Galilee. I have had significant life-changing events. My teenage son, my oldest son, who is now at seminary, will tell you that he had his first significant encounter with Christ at camp. Not through my preaching, but at camp. And so Epworth is a special place for us. But we believe and we know God is at work wherever God's people gather. And that can happen at Central Methodist. It can happen at a backpacking camp, going through maybe Colorado, through the mountains of Colorado. Who knows where those events may take place. God will meet us there, and the same kinds of experiences and ministries that have taken place at these sites will happen. They'll just happen at different places. The same God will be there, though, to meet us. Now, we cannot make that decision, and while technically, according to our church law, the Mission Council could make that decision to put the properties up for sale, that's not our intent. We believe that decision needs to be made by the Missouri Annual Conference. And I would just present this to the conference and say this is up to you. It's really up to the will of the conference about the properties. Now, if we decide to keep them, that means we also have an obligation to be better managers and stewards of these properties than we have been. I mean, there's a whole lot of discussion that has to take place around that, but it's our intent to ask the Mission Council to make this a formal proposal at the next annual conference. And then a couple more sub-points that are not nearly as major as what we've talked about. Restructuring next generation ministries under one board and a lot. We've merged CCYM and camping and retreat ministries, sort of, but there's still a lot that has to be figured out in terms of conference structure going forward. So we would see one board working with that. Integrate the mission trips. You know, we have many churches engaging in mission trips and students going across this, the country to serve, that would be integrated into this process as well. That all comes under one umbrella. And then we would, the other element of our proposal is that we would maintain the apportionment level where it is now. We feel that that's going to be adequate for the time to do the mobile camps. And again, to redirect that away from capital investments and maintenance into missional and ministry opportunities. If we were not going in this new direction, honestly, we would have to seek about a $130,000 increase to apportionments because of the insurance item and because of deficit spending. But because we are going in this new direction, we feel that we can keep apportionment levels at where they're at right now. And so that's kind of the gist of our proposal. It's multifaceted and it is a draft. We don't believe that these things are set in stone, that we're going to move forward and tweak it as we need to. But that's the direction, and we feel that the future is bright, that the best is yet to come when it comes to camping and to intentional faith development of next generations, equipping churches to do that. Any other thoughts from you?
You know, we're doing this after a long meeting this
Yes.
morning, and so this is kind of a summary. I think it captures a lot of the essence of the conversation. But I would just want those who are looking in on this that this morning Ron walked through many of these same things. We had more questions and answers, got into more details a little bit. In addition to the camping board being present and me being present, there are about 12 folks who came to listen and learn, but also to express opinions, express thoughts on this. And it was a very cordial conversation. I appreciated their participation and their presence. And I think it's just an ongoing conversation now, and I appreciate your sincerity and genuineness and the thoughtfulness of the whole committee in just kind of preparing this and thinking this through. I think much of the discussion in the last week or so has been on the last 2 or 3 decision points or action points or something, and that very few folks have gotten any sense, and I'm kind of catching up too, I feel like, on this, of the thought process of what were you looking to suggest. How does this impact local churches? How does this multiply ministry rather than shut down ministry? So I appreciate your thoughtfulness and taking the time to walk through this again this afternoon. I also would want to just, on the technicalities of process, want to reiterate that while when we look at the legal processes of Missouri law and nonprofits and this, that, and the other, it may be legally possible for the camping board and the mission council to act, on some of these proposals. I would just distinguish the personnel issues do belong to the camping board and especially to the conference staff. Programming issues entirely belongs to the camping board. But when it comes to the disposal of property, I would not want the Missouri Conference to go in that direction unless the annual conference is an annual conference owned that decision. And that means any proposal about selling properties, which properties, how many, that kind of thing will come before annual conference. And I anticipate there'll be many other communication points and opportunities between now and then. Do you want to say anything more about kind of next steps or communication processes or what you have in mind with any of those things? Or maybe you don't have that clearly in mind yet?
The next step, we know that we have not done the best job of communicating at this point, And so we're going to try to be more proactive in communicating. One of the things that a step that we missed, and I think I've already alluded to, is that we're going to meet with the event directors and hear from them, talk about alternatives. And we envision sometime next year before annual conference holding forums across the state to present the plan in more detail and to hear what folks in the conference are saying. And I'm sure there'll be more opportunities for communication, but that's what we're thinking, at least right now.
And then I presume, since you're very clear to say camping continues, it's just not on our sites, that come turn of the year, 1st of January, there'll be offerings of the camps for the summer, whether those are more the backpacking and canoeing type camps, whether those are things related to a campus like Central Methodist University, or whether those are the mobile camps.
We will be publishing a brochure that'll come out from the conference office that will have all of these experiences in one place. The camping events that will be held at alternative locations, including Central Methodist. The mission trips that will be going on both for our high school students and for college. And the mobile camps, perhaps. Those will be in the brochure and be published, so looking forward to getting that information out. And if this conversation that we've reenacted from earlier today has been of help, we're glad for that. And if it's raised some questions for you, we want to help answer those questions. And so we invite you to send your questions to Sarah Sims here at the conference office, and she will compile these. While we may not get to every particular question, what we'll do is we'll put them in, I'm sure they will focus on various themes, and then we'll publish something, an FAQ sheet or some kind of communication that will seek to give answers. And above all, we ask for your prayers as we move forward into a new future and to exciting possibilities for intentional faith development, leading congregations to lead people to actively follow Jesus Christ.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you.
Thank you.